You deserved everything you got. This is a union city.
That is a Philadelphia tradition.
Seize the means of podcasting.
Oh, God, the bosses crushed us.
Let me tell you one thing else.
In oldie-timey times.
The pleasure of the flesh is in solidarity.
We will not raw dog reality for that one.
It's going to be wholly unprofessional.
The Scab Buster.
What have we become?
Keep together strong. Let that be your mantra.
Here's to the Queen. I'm toasting a non-alcoholic Guinness.
Oh, that's fair.
What do you think my intentions are?
That's a very good point.
Hello and welcome to the Labor John podcast, where we praise the royal family of the working class history of... I have nothing for the opening. Of Philadelphia and the surrounding world. My name is Sam James. I'm a big fan of all types of monarchies the world over. Yeah, Gabe, I seriously have nothing for this intro. Do you got something better? I'm still flabbergasted by the death of Her Holy Highness Royalness.
All I can say is yes, gods, yes, kings, yes, bosses. So
okay, we serve neither king nor Kaiser, but Ireland.
Oh, was the other
and what is the other one?
We make butter, not profits.
And you are?
I'm Gabe Christie. I'm a fan of butter.
Oh, okay, the Butterman. All right, Butterman. What do we got? What do we got lined up for us today?
So today, we're gonna go. I think this is going to be the oldest strike that we've talked about so far, or the oldest labor action. We're going to talk about the Pennsylvania Mutiny of 1783.
Damn, we're going back.
Mm-hmm. So right now, or I just finished reading a book called Arms, Country, and Class by Stephen Rossworm, which gets into it's like a class analysis of Philadelphia during the Revolutionary period. And it's a really good book, and I've been obsessed with it while reading it, so there's going to be a lot more like Revolutionary or Rev War era episodes in the coming months.
Okay. Well, all right.
Get ready for some really weird and confusing titles, because that's 18th century. It's fun.
All right, let me put in my wooden teeth and let's get rolling.
Yep. So to give the backdrop of all of this, I'm gonna do a very, very truncated history of the first 150 years or so of Western colonization in Pennsylvania.
Gabe. Gabe. No.
Yeah.
No. We seriously need to start cutting back the time on these episodes, man.
Okay, so there were colonies.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Europeans came over. Basically, they'd either exploited, exterminated, or tried to enslave the native population. And then
I thought you were gonna leave those guys out.
No, oh no. And then they also started bringing enslaved people from Africa to do the work which the European subjects didn't want to do. And then after a while, all the Europeans got these funny ideas about not wanting to be subservient to the Europeans or to the old world nations anymore. Basically, it was a nation of Karens, or it's like a Karen revolution. Some of the settlers started protesting against Great Britain. Great Britain didn't like that. So they started getting stricter and enforcing stricter laws and being a little bit more forceful with their response. Then on April 19th, 1775, folks started shooting at each other up in Massachusetts. And then shortly after that, the Continental Congress, which was this like kind of illegal governing body that was established to coordinate, fairly illegal governing body at this point, that was established to coordinate all of the colonists' efforts against Britain. So they established an army, which was made up of volunteer regiments from all 13 of the colonies along the East Coast. Pennsylvania was responsible for supplying 6 battalions first, or initially, and then by 1777, that was raised to 14 regiments. That was the Pennsylvania Line, is the line infantry, which were the regiments that Pennsylvania had raised. This is obviously very, very broad, but so the folks in those regiments, who were the actual focus of all of this, Pennsylvania was weird because they were Quakers, or their ruling class was mostly Quaker. So they didn't like shooting at other people that much.
Those are the oatmeal people, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And when you
I was waiting for the right point to come in because I was just going to let you keep on talking because you were just having so much fun talking about just American history from, point one.
Yeah.
But then I heard Quakers.
So the weird thing that happens is when you eat a lot of oatmeal, you become a pacifist.
Oh. Is that what happens?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. What about the steel cut? The real bad bitches eat steel cut.
That's true. This might only be rolled oats rather than steel cut.
Oh, yeah. They're pushovers.
Yeah. But so if you eat a lot of rolled oats, you become a pacifist, also known as a Quaker. That's just how it works. So Pennsylvania didn't have a pre-existing militia structure like all of the other colonies did.
God damn it, Eamon. Eamon, we're talking about the genocide of Native Americans. So disrespectful. Get off the table. Sorry, continue, Gabe.
Well, the couple times where Pennsylvania did raise an army or did raise some militia, it was pretty much specifically to kill natives. So yeah, it's great. All good things. But then, so after those people up in Massachusetts started shooting at each other, about 8,000 men volunteered for service. And these were coming from across all walks of life. It also wasn't like a militia drafted up from the lower classes, which made it actually distinctly different from the British Army at this point, which was all lower class people, basically somewhat coerced, somewhat conscripted, somewhat volunteered, and then very high class officers directing them.
A good structure.
Yeah.
I wonder what if they were to frag their commissioned officers in the British Army at this time, would it be like sticking a cannon in their tent while they were sleeping?
Probably. I mean, you could do that. Honestly, if you just nicked them with the bayonet, it would probably get infected and they'd die in a couple weeks. So
I like mine better. Sorry, Gabe.
Yeah. I mean, yours is certainly more dramatic.
What happened to Colonel Stevenson? I believe the cannon went off accidentally in his tent last night.
Again, this is the third lieutenant this week.
Something has to be done about this.
Perhaps thicker mosquito netting.
A tiger?
In Africa. We've watched that way too many times.
Oh, Jesus.
But later on, there's a bunch of different stuff that came in that kind of led to this. Mainly, you could pay for someone else to perform your service in the Continental Line.
Yeah.
So, or in the Pennsylvania regiments. So that meant that rich people could pay poor people to do their work for them. And
I'm so happy we got rid of that.
Yeah, it's a great,
it's
a good thing. So
I mean, that kind of did not go away real quick.
No,
because they were doing that for a very long time.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, we are still doing that.
Yes. Yeah, basically.
Yeah. So.
And Or if you're wealthy enough, you can just pay off a doctor to say that, like, you have chin splints or flat feet and therefore can't be drafted. Sorry. Just, oh well.
Yeah.
So by the end of the 1770s, Pennsylvania legislature started formalizing, like, what the Pennsylvania line regiments were. And it effectively became a standing army with longer enlistment periods and was being drawn mostly from the working class.
Okay. As the way it should be.
Yes,
okay.
Yeah, as always, you should just throw poor people at cannons until you throw enough poor people that the cannons stop shooting at the rich people. And that's how you win wars. That's the best way to do it.
We're sponsored by the U.S. Army this week, too. It's the Super Bowl and us.
Yep. The BAE Systems and Raytheon. So then in 1781, this will be another episode at some point, we saw one of the first big mutinies of the Pennsylvania regiments over issues with pay. Because one of the things about being poor is that you have to work for a living. And then when you're away fighting a war, you can't be at home working.
Oh, okay.
So they were expecting to be paid while they were out fighting.
And that didn't happen.
And well, they were being paid, but they were being paid in paper money, which was problematic because that paper money kept inflating. And so basically by the time you were paid, basically your money was becoming increasingly worthless as the war went on. And so they kept demanding to be paid in hard specie, which is coins.
What? Oh,
sorry. Yeah. So specie is coins.
Okay. Okay.
Or like hard currency. And so these were usually made out of an actual precious metal. So then you could like trade them.
Okay.
Or they were at least backed by a precious metal. So that's like pound sterling meant that you were guaranteed a certain amount of sterling silver in exchange for your pound.
Oh, okay.
And hard currency was a long-running issue in the colonies in that they physically did not have enough, like, actual physical money for the economy to happen. And this is one of the things that is really weird about the 18th century is that everything, or like, I'd wager probably 30 to 50% of the economy only existed on paper.
Oh, okay. Well,
just,
I mean,
which is like how, and today we're probably at closer to like 95% of the economy only exists on paper. It's
not even on paper anymore.
No, it's just ones and zeros.
Yep.
Somewhere. And people...
All it takes is one solar flare.
Yep.
And we're fucked.
Yep. Just one well-placed EMP and all of a sudden everybody's banks are gone.
Gabe, you just got me excited, actually, buddy. Where'd you get an EMP from?
I didn't
Let's
say
do
I have one.
it.
This was not. This is not actionable. I do not have an EMP.
Gabe,
sorry.
You got me so excited. You said no bags.
Basically, like the whole the whole colonial economy was being run on credit because they didn't actually have enough hard money to go around to pay everyone that needed to be paid. And the Continental Army kind of just continued that.
Yeah.
And was paying a lot of people on, or there was some fancy bookkeeping going on to pay these tens of thousands of troops. So then a bunch of Pennsylvania troops that were stationed in New Jersey mutinied over not being paid in hard currency. And then the president of Pennsylvania's Supreme Executive Council, Joseph
This
Reed, who I believe that's who Reed Street's named after now. But he went from he rode out from Philly with 20 cavalrymen on January 4th, and basically ran the militia down, or ran the mutineers down, and forced them to surrender.
Oh, nice.
The men were not only demanding back pay in hard currency, but also better housing. And so they either wanted to be properly paid for their service, or they wanted to be discharged so that they could go back home to their families and start working again so they could make money.
Yeah, okay request.
Yeah, it's fairly reasonable. So the Continental Army and Pennsylvania's Supreme Executive Council negotiated with the mutineers and resolved the issue without too much bloodshed. And this really, really pissed
What
off.
did blood say again?
Without excessive bloodshed.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I thought like you were introducing a new character here.
No. Joseph Reed will come back. But...
I thought you were just writing the lyrics to a heavy metal song you just came up with.
So it really pissed off George Washington that the Continental Army and the Pennsylvania legislature were willing to negotiate with the soldiers, because he basically wanted to just hold them all at gunpoint and tell them to shut up. So,
Founding father George Washington.
yes, that one
who was bestowed upon us by the Lord himself.
yes.
That one.
Yep.
Oh,
Great guy. Wanted to basically force all of his own troops into submission at gunpoint. So.
cheery.
Yeah. So that was the first mutiny in 1781, and there's a lot that I glossed over, so that'll probably be its own episode at some point. But it's important to talk about for the 1783 mutiny because basically it was all the same guys, or a lot of the same guys doing it. So they kind of they figured that in 1783 they could get away with it again.
Tricky. All right.
So by June of 1783, the war was starting to wind down. There had been a ceasefire, an effective ceasefire since like early 1782. And there were the negotiations were ongoing to determine what peace would look like. So they knew it was starting to end. So the Continental Army had been quartered all around various cities on the East Coast, but they were still armed and were basically on high alert to get recalled in case the British started.
It goes down again. Yeah.
Okay. So basically what you ended up having is there were a lot of very well-trained, very well-armed men who had been in the military for at least 2 or 3 years at this point, hadn't received a lot of pay, were being kept away from their families, and were all cooped up in a barracks in Philly. So you can see that this is a great situation.
Something, powder keg, something.
Yeah.
Literally powder keg.
Yeah. So in April of 1783, the Continental Congress passed a resolution that was supposed to raise the money necessary to pay off all of the debts they owed, which was both to pay the soldiers and all of the merchants and everyone who had been equipping the army the whole time. They hadn't just been paying the soldiers on credit, they had been paying everyone on credit.
Okay, yeah.
They had passed this bill trying to raise all of the money, but they also knew that they weren't going to be able to raise enough to actually pay all of the soldiers the amount of money that they owed them.
Okay. So they came clean and told everybody, and then the soldiers understood, and they shook hands.
Are you reading my script right now? Because that's exactly what happens.
Oh my God, Gabe.
Yep.
Gabe.
The amazing thing about the Pennsylvania Mutiny is that it was not a mutiny, and everyone just went home. It was fine. But yeah, so Congress was very concerned about disbanding the army and sending all of these people back to their houses or to their homes and families without pay, because this was a very large, well-trained body of people who were very well armed. Or yeah, I said they were well armed, and they were pretty disgruntled, and they didn't want them to just be like roaming the streets, because they knew that wouldn't go well for them.
Okay.
So then Congress came up with some fuckery as a solution here. They would furlough, which basically like sending them on an extended leave of absence without pay. So it would furlough some of the men, and you were allowed to go home and you could work, but you could get called back at any time. But that initial furlough plan didn't include any provisions to pay them. So it was basically just like, hey, you can go home now, and that's all we're doing.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so for some reason, the soldiers weren't super happy about this plan. Actually, Congress didn't tell them about this initially. In all of its infinite wisdom.
Okay.
So they first started furloughing troops in Maryland, and then that freaked out all of the officers because they recognized, like, oh, we're about to have a bunch of really fucking pissed off people all around us, and we don't like that. The officer...
Gabe, this is the slowest runaway train I've ever experienced.
I'm trying to, like, it's... The lead up to this is important to understanding, like, what happened, but there's no easy way to get through it.
Gabe, did you know that gif of the bus speeding towards, like, this metal pole and just never crashing into it? This has been this episode.
Yeah,
for me.
Okay, so Washington told Congress, you need to actually pay these guys because otherwise they're going to be pissed off and kill all of us.
Yeah.
Congress was like, yeah, that's probably fair. So then they passed a thing saying that they would include payment. But the guys that they had furloughed in Maryland were already furloughed, so they weren't getting paid.
Okay.
And they sent them back up to Philadelphia.
What? Okay.
So
they sent the Maryland guys back to Philadelphia?
I was trying to figure that out. I think it was a northern regiment that had been stationed in Maryland rather than a Maryland regiment. It wasn't terribly clear from the stuff I was reading. But for some reason, in June 1783, a bunch of dudes from Maryland came up to Philadelphia and were like, yeah, we just got kicked out of the army without pay.
All right.
Then the Pennsylvania Gazette published this whole long thing basically saying, like, Congress, in their infinite wisdom, disbanded all of these soldiers without paying them, and they're going to do it to everyone.
Shit.
Yeah. And then they also said, and they finished this by basically saying, like, if Congress is going to disband us, we should just go and disband Congress.
Saucy.
Yeah. So then now we're going to get into the actual Pennsylvania regiment. And I apologize for all of this buildup. It was... there wasn't an easy way to get to this point.
I've never experienced blue balls when it comes to 18th century American history until this moment, Gabe. Thank you.
It is a common problem. while all of this has been going on, the officers of the Pennsylvania Regiment basically started like organizing a coup against Congress.
The officers.
Yes.
Okay. So the officers weren't getting paid either.
They were going to get disbanded without pay as well, because most of them were landowner, or a lot of them were landowners. They could kind of like just ride on that for a little bit.
Yeah.
But they also recognized like it's not in our best interest to have all of these pissed off guys.
Mm-hmm. It's that fragging with a cannon again.
Yeah. So the other side of it is that the officers all had to pay for their own equipment, which, especially in the 18th century, meant like a shit ton of gold and a horse and a bunch of fancy stuff. Yeah. So even if like you had a little bit of land back in Philly, or like you rented out a house to someone, you spent basically your whole life savings so that you could wear a snazzy uniform and look like a little fancy lad.
Yeah, but they got it when they went back into the city. You know that, right? And probably on the field too.
Yeah, I mean, it gets lonely out in the Princeton campaign.
It gets lonely in the Princeton campaign. That's a song right there.
Oh, sorry, I got my timeline wrong. 5 days after the Pennsylvania line people, after everything that I just said, that's when the dudes from Maryland who had just gotten furloughed showed up and were like, yeah, this fucking sucks. I'm getting kicked out without any pay.
Yeah.
Which, like, understandable that you'd be a little bit annoyed about that.
Sure.
But then all of the dudes in Philly started getting nervous that they were going to be next. And then some of them, so then the guys, or the next day, Congress, in like feverishly trying to fix all of this, because everyone at this point kind of realized, like, if we fuck up right now, we're all gonna be dead very soon.
I
mean, I would like to be paid, and I can understand being pissed off for not getting paid. So they basically threw them a bone and gave the guys who had been serving the longest...
Literally a bone.
Yeah. It might as well have been, because they were being paid... so they gave them 3 months of pay, rather than the, like, year or so more pay that they were owed.
Hey.
So
was it in precious metals, or was it still like paper? Oh, Jesus Christ.
It was paper money. So basically, Congress threw them a pizza party.
We're all we're all a family here.
Yeah, we're all family.
Make sure you clock out before you have any pizza, and make sure.
Sorry, let me be more accurate about this. Congress took a break from its like 6-year-long rum, brandy, and whiskey binge that they'd been doing this entire war, and then they threw these guys a pizza party.
Thank God Congress isn't like that anymore, Gabe.
No, it's everything's changed. It's much better now.
It's fully functional.
Yep. Obviously, the Pennsylvania line guys got a little bit insulted that Congress threw them a pizza party.
Yeah.
And so they sent a letter, or 300 sergeants from the Pennsylvania Regiment sent a letter to Congress, basically being like, stop being dicks. Or we think that that's what the letter said. We don't have the letter anymore. But we have the response to the letter.
Okay.
Which was... Oh, no, sorry. We have an explanation of their demands from John Armstrong, who was an officer in the Army.
Okay.
And so the late unqualified resolve of Congress, discharging or furloughing, as they are pleased to call it, All
God.
these men who have been engaged for the war without even a settlement of accounts was taken up very spiritedly by the little corps at this place, consisting of but 300 men. They addressed themselves to Congress upon the occasion in language very intelligible. We will not accept your furlough and demand a settlement.
They said no.
Yeah, thank you. That I've taken the 18th century approach to writing this script, which is that it took me 5 pages to say like a paragraph.
Yeah, if you take the 18th century approach in all facets of your life.
It is. It's very true. I like being a fancy lad.
You should come out with me on Friday nights then, man.
Oh, true. So, and this is basically the start of the mutiny at this point. That Congress went out to these guys and said, hey, we're going to throw you a pizza party and then you'll disband and you'll be happy and you won't kill us. And all of the soldiers were just like, yep, but maybe if we don't do that. And so they stayed in their barracks and refused to leave. Which I guess kind of makes this a sit-down strike.
Ooh, interesting.
Because you could almost argue that Congress was trying to enforce a lockout. But it's weird.
The first sit-down strike in American history?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, presumably they were doing a lot of sitting, so.
We're breaking new ground here.
We are. Well, they broke this ground in 1783. We're just talking about it, but.
Yeah, but no one has. Gabe, this is amazing stuff.
It's true.
You just discovered something.
I did. So I think we should get another mention in the Inquirer just for this.
Fuck, you just jinxed us. 15 Philly podcasts not to listen to.
So
I guess we should mention that we were mentioned in the Inquirer.
Oh, yeah. And of course, now after that mention, we're doing an episode where nothing is from the Inquirer because it didn't exist yet. But
oh, well, it didn't exist yet. Okay.
Yeah. Basically, so then they invited guys or all of the other Pennsylvania regiments because there was only a couple hundred guys in Philadelphia. So they invited guys from, or invited people from every other Pennsylvania regiment to come and join them and be like, we're just going to hang out in this barracks and kind of just scare the shit out of Congress until they pay us.
Yeah.
So then Congress did more fuckery, or someone at the pay office. No one's quite sure who came up with this idea, but basically the paymaster showed up and said, hey, we will pay people in full, but only if they, or we will pay people, but only if they accept the furlough. So,
And they'll pay in full?
no, I think
Just another 3 months?
4 months pay.
Oh,
So
okay, 4 months.
You get an extra slice of pizza.
Okay, you get an extra slice of pizza. You get to go home and work,
Yeah.
but we can call you back?
Yeah. At any time.
This is fuckery.
Yes. So that didn't work. Surprisingly, they didn't start shooting at the guy when he came and presented those
Poor
terms.
guy. That poor payroll clerk.
Yep.
He's just shaking.
Yeah. It was probably some 14-year-old kid too, because 18th century armies were like that. So then on the 19th, or June 19th, John Dickinson, who was the Supreme, or the president of the Supreme Executive Council, so he received word and presented it to Congress that all of those, or that troops from Lancaster were about to march into the, or were basically about to invade Philadelphia.
And their horse and buggies.
Yeah. Yeah, so the Amish brigade had showed up.
Yeah, Kettle Jebediah.
Yep. At this point, they're Well, no, they were probably all English because there was like actually a large Mennonite community in Pennsylvania at this point, but they were up in Bethlehem.
Oh, okay.
Because they were they weren't Mennonites, they were Moravians.
I always get them confused too, Gabe.
Yeah, weird German Protestant sects.
Mary Popovich, yes.
Pennsylvanians that don't make oats because they're not Quakers.
Okay.
They make
do
beer.
Mennonite okay. Do Mennonites make oats?
I'm sure some do. I mean, the Mennonites and Quakers are kind of similar. Yeah, I don't know that much about them. I'm Jewish, so
that's your excuse for everything, Gabe.
it's true.
You can't keep using that for.
I'm sorry, officer. I can't pay my parking ticket. I'm Jewish. So then the next day, 100 troops from Lancaster marched in with their bayonets drawn. They were playing marching songs on the fife and drums. And they had all stuck little twigs with green leaves, which was like a symbol of resistance.
Camouflaged. I'm a tree, so we're camouflaged.
It's true. They had some clever hat camouflage. And so they marched into the city, and basically the whole city came out and cheered them on. Because the other thing with Philly is that obviously...
I mean, it's a parade of a bunch of guys with their bayonets drawn with twigs on their hats.
It's true.
I mean, you would come out and support them if you were in Philly.
Yeah. Those guys from Lancaster all basically met up with the guys in Philly, and they all just went back to the barracks in Philly and continued to just kind of hang out there and just kind of like look over at Congress. And Congress just kind of looked back at them, and everyone was just kind of like,
will they, won't they?
What's going to happen here? And then, so then two citizens who we still don't know who they were, but they were like two known like radicals in Philadelphia, apparently snuck into the barracks and started talking to all the mutineers and kind of getting them riled up and being like, hey, you've got all these guns here. And, Congress doesn't have guns. And maybe you should think about that.
Oh, yeah, we do have guns.
Yeah, I was like,
thank you, two strangers.
Is that what that is? So basically they said, like, you should just go threaten Congress and then get what you want. So
they were just undercover police officers.
Yeah.
Throw these rocks.
Honestly, today it would be like, well, if this was actually happening today, it would be like two FBI informants going to tell a group of CIA informants that they should all commit violence against like a TSA informant.
Oh my God.
And
oh my God. Why is this not a Tom Clancy novel?
That should be. So then the next day, a delegation of sergeants all marched up to John Dickinson, and listed their demands, and then said, basically, we will fuck you up if you don't abide by this.
Okay.
And John Dickinson said, okay, I'll take that back to the executive council, and we'll let you know. And probably got the fuck out of there. So,
like, well, they had bayonets, but I was more scared about the fucking twigs in their hats.
This is the scary thing, man. You don't know. I mean, you know what a bayonet does. You don't know what a twig will do.
They just were standing there swaying at me. I'm a tree.
So Dickinson went back to the executive council, and they started deliberating and talking about, like, should we pay these guys? Well,
God.
yeah, but is it worth it for us to like give up some money and not get killed? Or I would prefer to have money and not get killed. So can we figure out how to make that happen?
Rich people deliberating is like a couple going, where do you want to go out to eat tonight? No, where do you want to go out to eat tonight? Let's just fuck it.
Yeah.
We're getting Thai, which is the equivalent of, we'll give them 4 months pay with a furlough.
I mean, pizza parties have always worked. And they're a tried and true way of resolving labor disputes.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
So then
there is no pro-union push in this country at the moment.
No.
We have nothing to worry about.
But the pizza industry is booming.
Mm-hmm.
So
Pizza's going to take a hit, man.
Oh, that's a
maybe I should rethink my pro-labor stance, to tell you the truth.
See,
we're going to lose a lot of pizza shops, bud.
But really, the goal or the key right now is you got to set up a pizza delivery service specifically for picket lines. So,
Gabe, holy shit! What if the pizza shops get unionized?
Exactly.
Is that like the universe imploding? What's going to happen?
There was I think there was actually a union drive at a Papa John's.
Where is it? Because I want to be a counter protester to that. I'm not going to let that happen.
I think it was in Florida, but this was back in like the early 2000s.
Okay.
So they already crushed them. So
right.
Don't worry.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God.
They just threw too many free pizzas at them, and it solved the problem.
We're going to list the Pinkerton Agency's Patreon in the show notes. So you can donate a few bucks.
Yep.
The $5 tier is where they crush an Amazon union.
Yep. And again, today's episode is brought to you by Raytheon.
And the Philadelphia Inquirer. If you're going to read a paper today, read the Philadelphia Inquirer.
It's true. That one is actually legitimate. Basically, the executive council told Dickinson, you should just call out the militia and go and shoot all of these soldiers for us. And Dickinson was like, I'd love to, but the militia is on their side, and they'll probably just end up shooting at us.
Oh.
Yeah. So, and that's another episode down the line, is like all of the craziness in the Pennsylvania militia, because it was cool.
Jesus Christ, Gabe.
There's a lot of cool shit in this book.
You're gonna
man.
fuck.
I'm just gonna read the book cover to cover for an episode. So it won't be an episode; it'll be an audiobook.
Oh my God.
So then the mutineers then submitted their next set of demands. They wanted half of the wages due to each man, with with additions for rations and clothing. They wanted they say patents, but it's basically like they wanted an actual lease for all of the land holdings that they had been promised, because a lot of these guys had agreed to take farmland instead of pay. So then they wanted these offers to be made to the guys who were already discharged as well, and extra stuff to be paid to anyone who had like lost limbs or anything in the war, which is fair. Like they were trying to take care of wounded veterans.
We always take care of our wounded veterans.
Yeah, we do a great job of it.
Yeah, it's the first thing we do when they come back. So
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Also they wanted the payment to be tied to inflation, so that they didn't like lose 10% of their wages as they were physically being handed the stack of cash.
When do we start like prescribing antidepressants with these episodes, Gabe?
That's a very good point. We should probably do that.
I got so much anxiety, Gabe. This is terrible, man. Because I know what's coming.
Yeah.
Because they call the fucking mutineers.
Yep.
It's not going to end at them sitting in a barracks for a week.
So then they're technically already mutinying because they're refusing to follow orders, which is technically a mutiny, but it gets more fun. So the basically the delegates that came and said like, hey, this is what we want, also told Congress that all of them were under arms and were basically sitting in the barracks waiting for the word to go, and that they would come and surround Congress.
All right.
And fight it out if necessary. They also were pretty explicit that, like, yeah, the entire citizenry of Philadelphia is behind us, along with the militia. So, do you want to be in a very hostile city in, like, a couple hours? Because we can make that happen.
Yeah. It's like if January 6th was actually, like, a legitimately good idea.
Yeah.
And, like, the whole city came out and we're like, yeah, we agree with these motherfucking people.
Yeah. I think this is the closest thing I could say is if, like, Philly during the one, I think it was in June, the one BLM protest where they kettled everyone on routes or on the Vine Street Expressway.
Yeah.
Basically, if, like, that day the BLM protesters were also very heavily armed.
No. Oh no, Gabe. What's gonna happen?
So basically Dickinson freaked out. There were a bunch of rumors that the soldiers were going to attack the bank first, because they figured, like, they're not going to go after Congress. They're going to go to where the money is. So they're going to go to the bank. So Dickinson called up the militia, and 13 dudes showed up to defend the bank against about 500.
All right.
But
imagine being the one guy, you know, who's like, all right, I'm going to show up a little late, so I'm not the first one there. He's the 13th guy.
Someone else is showing up first.
He's like, oh, fuck.
So then, but
holy shit, there's a forest of trees moving towards us, playing the fife and drums.
But the mutineers didn't actually show up to attack the bank. And they were starting to freak themselves out because there were rumors that troops under General Robert Howe were going to march into Philadelphia and kill all of them.
Yes. Well, I'm sure those 13 guys felt really good about, like, they felt like they just Spartan the whole fucking army.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, I just held this off. So
I think that 13 guy was like, holy shit, thank God.
Yeah. So basically at this point, the mutineers had gone and, like, threatened Congress and were, like, kind of out presenting or showing off in the streets of Philadelphia, being like, yeah, fucking pay us because we're well armed and we will make your life not fun. And then
they were showing off.
Yeah. But then the friggin' Amish battalion from Lancaster got all scared that General Howe was going to come kill all of them.
They weren't actually Amish, though, right?
Sorry?
They weren't actually Amish, though, right?
No, they weren't.
Okay.
But they did all
your
jump.
sarcasm isn't as flagrant as mine.
So they... the troops from Lancaster basically just really quickly marched out of the city and just kind of got the fuck out of there because they didn't want to see what was about to happen. And then within, like, 3 days, or within, I think it was 2 or 3 days, basically all of the other mutineers just started freaking out and it all just kind of like collapsed in on itself really quickly.
Okay.
Which is really upsetting, and I apologize for continuing to blue ball you here. Because then the next thing that happened is that General Howe marched into the city and the mutineers basically surrendered. And there was no bloodshed.
I'm so upset. I feel so betrayed.
It's, and this is also, the 1781 mutiny will be more fun, but...
you couldn't just make something up, Gabe?
No.
Gabe, I would have made something up if this was my episode.
But there was an actual, like, important consequence of all of this. Namely, Congress decided it couldn't hold the capital, or it didn't want to be in it didn't want the capital city to actually have a population around it, because they realized that they can't pass laws that'll piss off a bunch of well-armed poor people.
Okay.
And that's basically where Washington, D.C. comes from.
Hey!
Because a bunch of pissed off boys from Philly held Congress at gunpoint for a couple days.
It's hard to march a forest of trees through a swamp.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, exactly. And you'll all die of yellow fever by the time you get to the other end of it. So, yeah. So that
no, Gabe, you better make something up. You better make something fucking entertaining up for the end of this episode.
Nope.
All right,
people are just gonna have to deal with it.
No, the mutineers were out there showing off. They were doing balloon tricks.
Yep.
And one guy was like, "It's a dog, it's a gorilla, it's a bicycle," and he accidentally popped it with his bayonet.
Mm-hmm.
And so those soldiers protecting Congress started firing into the crowd, and they started firing back. And then the mutineers broke into Congress, started, stibby stabbing.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but amongst all the bloodshed, the mutineers, it was remember that scene in Life of Brian?
Mm-hmm.
When the PFJ...
I don't even know what scene you're talking about. PFJ?
Yeah. PFJ. The People's Front of Judea.
Oh, yeah.
And the Judea's People Front were fighting each other, right? And they all kill each other except Brian?
Yes.
Remember that? Yeah. So that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
But all that was left was Gordie Howe?
Robert Howe.
Sorry. I thought we were doing a hockey podcast all of a sudden. So Gordie Howe was the last one standing. And it was at that moment that the brave 13 who protected the bank showed up. And Gordie Howe
I'm just going to also include that for some reason in the Pennsylvania militia, it was one man from each of the 13 colonies.
Okay, we can do that. Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Gabe, I was just about to say that. Thank you for reminding me. And so Gordie Howe took them all under his wing, and they all became the governors of the 13 colonies, and Gordie Howe became the president.
Yep. And
so
they also formed the first amateur hockey team.
Yes, they actually did.
In the New World.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it was the original 13 teams.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's a much better ending to this episode.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm sorry.